Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today we're going to talk about the new raid, Too Hot to Handle, and some nerfs to it that were announced. And I can't say I'm surprised. I thought about making a video kind of on this last week, and I've mentioned it a few times, and we talked about it on DDO Cast, which I'm on this week, which I was on this past week, and I will be in the next few weeks if you want to check that out. But there's been a lot of community response to the new raid Too Hot to Handle in Sharn, and I will say it's been a huge challenge for the community. So it's a very difficult raid. If you've not run it, it's really difficult, and it's also pretty complicated. It requires a lot of party coordination, and there's not a lot of room for error in actually executing the raid mechanics. So there's been some people in the community a little frustrated. Well, not more than some, I would say. But generally what's going on right now, and we're going to go through the developer post today talking about what they're doing in terms of nerfs, although it doesn't give a lot of detail, but we'll talk about that in a minute. What's been happening in the community is some people are completing on normal. I would say some, from what I've read, feedback I've read, a lot of pugs are not able to complete on normal, but a lot of guilds, I don't know if I would say a lot, but a pretty good amount of guilds are completing on normal, apparently. Very few are completing it on hard, and nobody has completed it on elite or on any of the Reaper modes. So that's where it's at. So of course, some of the community likes this. Your players that really like challenge are totally fine with this. I've seen some posts from players just really, really ecstatic about this. Like they feel like a rush that they've not felt in a while, and they like the idea that a raid is something that a new raid should not be just conquered on day one. You shouldn't have like elite completions day one. They like that it's really pushing the raiding guilds. On the other hand, there's a lot of people who are more casual players who like literally can't run the content, and they feel, well, I don't know if say they can't, but they feel like they can't run the content. They feel gated out from the content because it's too hard for them, even on normal. Like even normal is really hard. Like I went into normal when I ran this first time, and I was getting hit for like over 6,000 damage in spots just on normal. So that was kind of nuts. But anyways, there's a lot to say here. So let's just go ahead and get started going through the developer post here. So Too Hot to Handle, difficulty. So this is what the developer had to say. So that raid, Too Hot to Handle, kind of living up to its name. After watching you fight the good fight for a couple of weeks and going over the data, we've concluded that the raid is overperforming modestly for our goals. As a result, we are currently testing a few changes that will affect all difficulty levels, although the adjustment to Elite will be much smaller. None of these changes affect core mechanics of the raid, and instead will target pacing. The fixes should be live within a few weeks, but we'll have an exact date soon. So that's pretty vague. They did say that none of the mechanics are going to be will be impacted. So I assume that there's going to say the puzzles aren't going to be made easier. Like right now, if you're not aware, the lever puzzles, you have to line up basically on each side of the room a certain lights, and the levers to pull them do not line up with the lights you have to pull. Some people have not really like that, but I think that's I'm sure that's intended to make the puzzles a little bit more difficult. So they're not going to change that or anything like that, and just make the levers line up with the lights you have to light up. So I don't know what they mean by pacing. If I had to guess, I would say that they're going to give us more time, but to solve the puzzles before the dots on all the effects in the room that kill you start ramping up so fast. I would say they're probably going to mean that we're going to have, it's going to be more forgiving in terms of how long you have to solve those puzzles and pull the levers and do the things you have to do in the raid. That's my guess. That's what I would predict. They didn't say anything in this first paragraph about the damage. So let's go ahead and continue and see if they say anything later. Okay, so the developer continues. A few notes. This is one of the most difficult raids we've seen in a while. There have been no elite completions and very few hard completions across all servers, a fair number of normal. The guides we see posted have become more accurate, yet not perfect, indicating knowledge of the raid mechanics is mostly out there. There are a few wrinkles, though, that if you guys don't understand yet, it will cost you, giving no spoilers, though. And there are some good guides. Like if you want to learn the raid, there are completions you can watch on YouTube. And there's a really good guide on Reddit that I did read. I'll post that below in the description if you want to check that out to help you learn the raid. So I think that, so just as a general standard here, I think that normal, if not normal, let's just say the lowest difficulty. The lowest difficulty setting I think should be completable by just 12 random people in a pug that are decently geared. Should be able to complete it with a good chance of success on the lowest difficulty. Like you shouldn't need a ton of past lives. You shouldn't even need amazing gear. You shouldn't even really need a diversity of roles. So and I know there are pugs completing this on normal, but it seems like there's a lot who aren't as well. So hopefully this change that they're making here with the pacing, hopefully it's going to make it more forgiving, because the one thing that I've noticed in feedback from this raid, and I have to just say a disclaimer, I have not run the raid a bunch. I've only run the raid one time, so I can't really comment a whole lot on this. I can just kind of say what I feel from what I've seen based on feedback and what I've seen, what I believe in terms of a design perspective. But I guess in terms of a design perspective, the lowest difficulty setting, like I said, should be completable on 12 first life characters in a pug without even with being able to take pretty much any class. So, and I think that that's possible now, but it seems like the raid is just too a little bit. The margin of error is just kind of small. So hopefully the pacing solves that. So. And I didn't mention this. I talked a little bit about this in my video from a few weeks ago about the learning difficulty, and where I thought like a learning difficulty would be a good idea. And I don't really care if it's normal, if it's legendary normal or a learning difficulty. There just needs to be an accessible way for people to get into the content. I mean, I think a learning difficulty would be great, but if they're not going to do that, then at least make normal. You have to at least make normal like easy, easy for raiding guilds, and very accessible for pugs to be able to complete, have a good chance of completing even without geared out characters even on first life characters, with really no strict classes required. So hopefully that does this. Let's go ahead and continue. The raid was designed to push our raiding community harder and to shake up things, to see what life would be like if elite first completion was something that might not happen day one of release. We've actually gotten a lot of positive feedback on this count. Even if the raid seems crazy, there is always the question for some, can you find a way? We opted for putting the gauntlet in elite rather than Reaper because the Reaper tree power doesn't match up well with the first skull, and skull 10 is just bonkers. Look, challenge is great. And I don't want there to be another situation like we had with Mark of Death, where everyone was just mass completing on normal because the drop rates were so low on the higher difficulties that it didn't make sense. And that's been rectified to an extent with them removing the 20th list and replacing it with the system we have now. But I don't want there to be I want normal to be accessible, or the lowest difficulty, learning difficulty, if not. There to be some lower difficulty that's really accessible to people. But at the same time, it should not have the reward ratio to time should not be so favorable to normal that people aren't running the highest difficulties. Like the highest difficulty should have enough rewards and a much higher drop rate to the point where the raiding guilds have plenty incentive. Like it's way better time spent per minute to go with the higher difficulties than the lower ones. Like the lower difficulties should not be optimal for farming loot, for farming like threads of fate, anything like that. That should be on the higher difficulties. So what do they do? Just give us a difficulty that people can go in and just complete the thing, even if the drop rate's terrible, even if the rewards are terrible. Like learning difficulty or normal, whatever, just make it accessible. And I think that for a lot of people, they don't feel like it is right now. And I just don't see any downside, any reason why they can't give challenge. Like there should be challenge, and there should be rewards for challenge in Reaper and Elite and Hard even. which is fine. And they can give all that challenge and also make the content accessible to people on normal who just want to have a more casual experience. So I do think that we have difficulty levels for a reason also. So if it's so hard that very few people even completing it on hard, when we actually have 13 difficulties, then we have a system where we have 13 difficulty settings, but only only one really is being used en masse, and maybe two hard's being used sometime. That tells you things are off a little bit. And I'm not saying like Reaper, even though Reaper is coming more normalized, I'm not saying make like Reaper easy or anything, because Reaper 1 raids are really hard right now, I think, for a lot of raid, like a lot of even guild, like raiding guilds and things. Like Reaper 1 Strahd and stuff is still pretty hard. Reaper 1 Baba is still pretty hard. So I think that's totally fine. Like Reaper should be really hard for raids even on like the low, like Reaper 1. So that's okay. So let's see. The developer continues, our minor nerf to Elite was after some consideration of not touching it at all, but the thinking is, since it hasn't been beaten yet, moving the goalpost slightly closer will mean more people will be in the race. So basically, in this quote, the developer said that the adjustment to Elite will be much smaller and that the changes will affect all difficulty levels. So it doesn't really give us a good sense of how drastic the nerf is or how much easier the raid will be. I would expect it to be fairly minor, and then if they need to nerf it again, they can still do that, but they can't nerf it. If they nerf it too much, then they're screwed, because they can't and once they nerf it, they can't make it harder for players, because players don't like that. Players don't like, we've seen that plenty of times throughout the games, players don't like it if they make content harder. That was easy. So they probably need to be careful with these nerfs, because they can't overdo it. If they overdo it and make like normal trivial, or not even normal, make like hard trivial or something, or elite trivial, they can't go back and then make it harder again if they ever shoot the mark. So I would expect it to be a somewhat modest nerf, except maybe in normal. Maybe normal is more. They did strictly say here that Elite, the adjustment to Elite is going to be much smaller. And again, they didn't say directly anywhere in here, as I referenced earlier, they didn't say anything about the damage. They just said pacing. So the damage may still just be as high for the dot on normal, and for the, I forget the attack where the Forge Wraith like slams his head down onto the party. This might still be just as bad. So we'll have to see what happens. So it may just be the thing where the dot goes up slower, the dot damage goes up slower, and you have more time to do the puzzles. That's what it sounds like to me, but we will have to see. Again, I wish I could say more on this raid, but I really can't, because I've only run this once, so I don't have a ton that I can really contribute to it. And I will say, though, that as far as the raid goes and this nerf goes, I'm not surprised at all. And that's one of the reasons why I've only run it once, because I ran it once the week Sharn came out, and since then I was like, you know what, looking at community feedback, looking at what everyone's saying, I think this thing's, I thought the thing was going to get nerfed. I'm not surprised at all. Like, I really did think that they were going to nerf this based on community feedback. I thought it was very likely they were going to. I didn't say that in any of my videos or on DDOcast or anything, although I did say that I'm not worried about it, because I wasn't worried about it, because I knew that they had the stats, they had the information on completion percentages from everyone throughout the game worlds, and if they need to adjust it, they will. And based on the feedback, I really thought they did. So that's another reason why I haven't run the raid. So I'll probably run it more after this patch happens and they lower the difficulty. So, and I think it will be easier to run it, because I think there will be more people running it, because I think there was a segment of the player base that kind of ran it a few times and just got frustrated and were like, ugh, we're going to wait until a patch comes out. And I haven't seen too many LFMs on the like on my service, Thelanis, that have been running this. Although I guess that's not too uncommon, because just raiding LFMs in general aren't all that common anymore. So, and I know a lot of people are waiting to buy the expansion until it comes out for points as well in the fall. So that's another factor. But yeah, guys, overall, not surprised. We'll see what happens. We don't know anything about the damage, but we know that the pacing will be targeted, so it'll probably be slower for the dot, and the you'll have more time probably to solve the puzzles. That's my prediction. We'll see if I'm right. Hey guys, let me know what you think below. If you think that's right for them to nerf this raid or not. Would be interested in reading that. I'll try to respond to you if I can. But hey guys, that is going to be it for this video. I will see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.